I'm going to be a bit fast today because it's a lot I want to touch on. And the idea is much more. I know some of us will not need this. So there are some people who this is what they need. The other things we've been doing seem to be above their level of knowledge. So for those of us who know this, apologies that this may be like maybe where you can take it as somebody telling you again what you know before, but the main idea is to help those who are not yet in the finance line. So, finance for non-finance managers. Okay. Interestingly, we even have a course on it, and I think someone who wants to join so that she can see if she can be able to make the session. But I told her there will be a recorded version of it. So, I'm going to use some of the materials I use in the class, and as you can see, to make things faster for me, I've decided to write out what I want to try and touch. Okay, so you will see that it's a kind of a fairly long list. Let me zoom this a bit more. Accounting the language of finance. So I'm going to immediately start. And this is the material that I typically use when I am trying to do this for people. So let me just go there and drag it into the screen that will show on your device. Okay. So welcome to those who are just joining. We've not gone far, but it will be a speedy one. So if it looks like I'm kind of very fast, apologies. I want to touch a lot, and they will be the recorded version. So never mind. If there's any aspect that was too fast for you, you can always rewatch. But the key thing is I'm going to go at a pace that is still going to be understandable. So I'm just scrolling through intro and blah blah. Okay, so accounting is the language of finance. If I know people get promoted from a non-accounting background, a non-accounting role, to a role that they need to start interacting with financial statements and even getting involved in corporate plans and in vetting, even especially when you're a director, where you have to implicitly sign off on things and you have to understand what you are signing off on. Okay, so accounting principle, actually, the accounting equation is the key thing that I want you to take away from this aspect. Remember, I said that there's a kind of outline that I'm going to follow in taking you. So I'm here now. This is where I am. Okay, so I want to tell you what you need to know in accounting. So the very important thing you need to know is the accounting equation. So the accounting equation, translates to on every transaction, there has to fulfill this rule of assets equal to liabilities and owner's equity. Okay, you'll see how it plays out. I'm just going to quickly be mentioning all the things I need to put in your memory, your working memory as we go and do the practical. We'll do a practical also. So I'm watching time. Let me just check out how well I'm doing. I'm 7 minutes into time. So accounting equation is that aspect that you need to really get. And so let's look at what I have here. So assets, we all know. Let me just quickly use here. So that assets equal liabilities plus equity. Okay, so every transaction that happens is going to be moving things around that. So when you hear about the double entry journal and all of that, they are playing out all of this. Okay, so assets are all what the company has to use to generate future benefits. Okay, so liabilities are obligations, debts and obligations the company has. Owner's equity is whatever is remaining anyway, so it's the residual claim. Okay, so when you take out the liabilities from the assets, what is left is what we financially or accountingly time as owner's equity. Okay, so what I've said is every financial transaction is going to obey this, and this is the foundation of everything. So take a look at this illustration. So say that we come together to form a new company. We call the company Nigeria Limited. So if we put together 1 billion naira, that 1 billion naira that we put together, which is say cash necessarily also means cash, like we go with a truckload of cash. It can be like money in a bank. Very liquid anyway. So that is that side. So on the asset side, you have a 1 billion naira cash Well, there's no liabilities attached to it, so 0 naira liability. But that when you start a business, all that cash that you used to study, as long as you didn't take it as a loan for the business as equity, then this is the balancing side is 1 billion naira equity. So just have that in mind. I'm going to do more later on. Okay. So if we take out of that 1 million naira, 1 billion naira and put 300 million naira in getting a land in Lekki Free Trade Zone, you see again you have to acquire an asset with 300 million naira, right? But then you took out of cash. But then nothing happens on the liability side, nothing happens on the equity side. So you just reshuffled your assets. You took from cash, you moved to real estate kind of asset. So when you have all of this in mind, you will notice that something begins to play out. So if I have a company, so there's a company that has just started, and let me just put, so here, great. So if you start a business, and this is very instructional for those of us who do not have an accounting background, because this is what all of us can relate with. So we can relate with descriptions, with all these things that happen in a business, right? So 4 people came together and started a business, right? And now everything they do, I want to show you how all these descriptions translate to a financial statement. So it's going to be really interesting. Huh? So now in January 1, 2016, they put money together and started a business with 500 million naira. So great. That 500 million naira that they started a business with. See how all of that plays out here. So you need to record this in a journal. So this is the Nigerian Limited Journal. But if you use an accounting statement, it immediately translates into a general ledger. But then again, let's go step by step. Okay. So you see that cash of 500 million naira that they use in starting the business. This is it. It goes on the debit side. So again, let me quickly just show you for clarity's sake. When I think I have it somewhere that makes it great. So this, so for the different account types, for assets, okay. So when assets go up, it's a debit transaction. You increase the debit side, okay. So when they go down, and that value goes in the credit side. Liabilities is the other way around. When liabilities go up, again, this might not be too needed for you because more like bookkeeping. But just so that, well, you are aware, I don't expect you to remember it, but just to mention it. So when liabilities go up, then it's credit transaction, and then the other way, if it goes down, then it's on the debit side. Okay. Then the owner's equity. Now the owner's equity, that equity side, remember I said asset is equal to liabilities plus equity. Okay. Able to get out your financial statement, we normally stretch out that equity side a bit. So that equity side assets that I said is equal to liabilities plus equity. Okay. Now on this equity side, we stretch things out a bit more. So we break it down to, okay, we take out revenue. Okay. We take out expenses. Okay. We take out some of those other things, but I'm just going to bring out the major ones. Then there are some things that will definitely we form traditional lines in the equity side. So let me just call it shareholders equity. Okay. That. So now, that's what I'm saying is that all of what you are seeing here, all of this that you are seeing here, is an expansion of that equity side. It's me exploding that equity side. Okay, so revenue, expenses, gains and loss, it's a bit tricky to try to explain right now because I want to touch on a lot of things, but just have it in mind. So if you have it in mind that is the equity side, then naturally, if I already told you that, on the asset side, debits is when the thing goes up. On the other side, on the balancing side, which liabilities and equities are on, then it should be the impact, right? So liabilities, when they go up, that's when you credit them. Similarly, too, for equity. So anything that increases your equity goes on the credit side. So obviously, revenue goes on the credit side, it increases your equity, right? So when customer pays, assuming you are a miracle worker, you don't incur any expenses. So people just pay you for services, for goods. You don't have any cost attached. Maybe you are selling your head knowledge. You don't incur any cost. Then all that money is yours. Are you getting it? So that's how it accrues to the equity side, right? So that's why credit revenue, its credit goes up in credit side. Then expenses. So when you have to take out of that revenue and buy raw materials and do whatever is needed to generate the product that you need to sell, then you see that has an impact on your equity. It kind of draws it down, right? But because expense is a line in itself, right? So what do? We recognize that, okay, when expenses go up, right, then that's the debit side, because it's going to have an inverse effect on on your equity. Your equity is going to go down because you're taking out of that revenue. Okay, then gains, similar things. Anyway, just to blow things up a bit. So why I've just said that is so that you will understand that when you do all of this, your income statement is going to come out. Okay, but then let's just quickly look at some more of these transactions so that you get a feel of how all the activities that happen in a company typically ends up, being reflected in financial statement. So if I am a small business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, and I start explaining to if someone is knowledgeable on finance, though this is still accounting, like I told you, we're starting with accounting in that language of finance. Once I start explaining all this, the person is going to start being able to extract out, my financial statements. You might just need some proof so that, what is it, right? But all of these are what, so you see, company buys building, so everything that happens in the company, they pay salaries, they bought raw material, they pay for office, right? You will notice that everything we do is captured in here. We record them. So when it's an asset thing, asset goes up, then debit. When it goes down, then credit. So this is the journal, okay? But nowadays, because we use software to keep track of all of this, traditionally, you're going to end up with general ledger most of the time. So the general ledger is going to have anyway a bit like this, but not necessarily in a way that is going to look like something is spaced like this. It's not going to be spaced out like this. Okay, and so I'm going to skip a bit now to here. So your general ledger is it's going to look a bit like this with all the dates. I can't show you real company data, but I'm going to show you all the dates, all the transactions, and then it will have been normalized such that, let me show you what I mean by normalized. You will see that there will be like an ending balance too. Let me not use that yet. So it's going to be like every transaction and then the value. Okay. So on the debit side, the credit side, then there will be amounts. So usually you want to have an amount that will carry the signature so that when we are doing the trial balance, is that amount part that is summed up. So that's what I mean by there will be like a balance. So at the end, you can now be able to create your, let me see if I have that version of general ledger. Okay, the version I have is the one that I did with the T account style. Okay, but then let's just go here. So here we're going to have all the transactions, everything that happened. The trial balance now shows everything that has happened regard to each account type. So each account type is every transaction major categories that are going to lead us to our income statement, financials, the entire financial statement. So there's going to be the cash account. So typically companies have chart of accounts. Again, I want to compress the accounting part so that you just have an idea. You don't need to know how to create it from scratch if you are not going to be an accountant. But for you to understand finance, you need to understand what leads up to this. So all the things that happen to cash, all the total debit, all the total credit, and then what is the ending balance? All the things that happen, but the thing is that I have summed them up. So everything that is related to assets is already debit summed up. Everything that relates to liability is credit summed up. So that's why you notice that these are carrying the total value. So this is the trial balance. All the money we spend on inventory reflected. And then here reflected in terms of their are they positive value at the end, are they negative value at the end? Okay. And then when you sum them up, they must be equal to 0. So that's why there's this double entry system to ensure that whatever is done is adhering strictly to that asset equals to liabilities plus equity. So now that I've explained this, let's now move to another very important concept. Okay, I know this is a bit kind of rushed explanation. It's because I don't expect to be creating this from scratch. I just need to understand that all those things you see on the financial statement, they can come from English like this. We bought X amount of raw materials for so amount, and all those things, even though when you look at the financial statement, you don't see it that way. It looks like something already high level, but the truth is that they are coming from things we already relate with. Even when you're not a finance person, these are things you already relate with. So now let's talk about the trial balance. The trial balance shows all of the account types. Remember, I've explained what account type means. All the key things that we are tracking as regards our finances. So we are tracking our cash position, we are tracking our accounts receivable, we are tracking our inventory, we're tracking our plant and equipment, we're tracking, everything we are tracking is itself usually will have a GL account number. Okay, so great. Now that you understand that, so with the trial balance shows all of those accounts and then their final value at a point in time. So if I pull the trial balance as at today, right, I'm going to see all the cumulative transactions that have happened in those accounts summed up to now. Okay, so typically the trial balance naturally can give me the balance sheet easily because that is almost like the balance sheet. That's why there is something here to show. Are they equal? Are they, if you sum up all of this, it's 0. It should sum up to 0. When I do this on companies' financials, plugged into their ARP, the way whether correct, I've picked everything or not, is you just look at the total value. If it's not summing up to 0, obviously something is wrong. Okay, so that's the TB of the trial balance. Now, the concept that is a bit very important for non-finance people, that finance people already are aware of. So I've touched a bit of general ledger. General ledger shows all those transactions in the company. I've touched now on trial balance. So we're going to do this next, but I need to quickly explain the concept of accrual. So accrual is a concept that many of us who do not have an accounting background take some bit of time to get used to. What is accrual? Accrual says, you recognize an expense or a revenue, you recognize a transaction, within the period that is happening for. Let me use that word. The more technical term is going to be a lot more elaborate, but you see, I pay for rent. I paid 2 years rent. I paid it this month. When a typical person is doing his financial, even people who do personal finance, they just write it, I paid 2.5 million naira. They just write it as an expense line. They put the date beside it. And then they write, whatever other things that have happened that period. But when you're doing accrual, that's not how you're going to record that transaction. So if I'm doing my expense and income for the year of 2020, whether as a company or as an individual, if you're just doing the cash based, you're just writing everything that moved out of your account and came in. No. When we're doing the financial statement, we do the accrual based process, right? So you paid for something that is supposed to span 2 years, I'm doing my account for this year, I'm going to put only the portion that is for this year in that line. The other one is going to go to some other lines of items. So the other types of, we call this now, if you have done the cash-based kind of trial balance, we need to adjust. So usually for accountants, the accounting software is already set up to do all these adjustments automatically to even force you to posting depreciation, posting accruals. But then let me explain what we mean. So imagine that some of these salaries, we pay salary after the month. So you know what that means? If I do my financial statement for this year, 2020, right? I had paid out the staff salary for November. I've not yet paid out for December. If I'm writing in the salary account and I'm just writing all what I've paid, it will be wrong. Why? I owe them the salary for December. Be recognized in December, right? So that amount should be recognized in December. So the adjusted trial balance says that I need to now start capturing for things like accrued expenses, the fact I incur tax. That tax I've not yet paid because they are going to evaluate me next year. Well, I need to capture that tax in the year that I'm doing the reporting, right? So that money that has not even gone out, but is meant for the period you are reporting for, has to be captured, right? So that's the concept that a bit takes time for non-finance people, non-accounting people to grab that. You are supposed to capture things as and when they happen. The customer paid you for, maybe now you supply customers goods, right? And the customer has paid you this month, but you're going to supply it next month. Next month is January 2021. You might go and take that money and put it in revenue. No, it's not your revenue. You're not going to put it in your revenue. So following accrual, that money is not going to be in your, in fact, for not even following accrual, following the the accounting rule, there is a strict rule to what you recognize as revenue. But let's even put that aside if you want to think about what I'm saying. You're only going to capture that as revenue when you have fulfilled the obligations for it. You have actually delivered the service or the product, right? So even though the customer has paid me this month, I'm not going to recognize it as revenue now, right? It's going to be deferred revenue. It's going to be somewhere else, you know. So similarly to when I hold suppliers, right? Even though I didn't pay the supplier, I'm not going to think as if, oh, I have, some money that I, have not spent. You have spent it in accounting, in quotes, you spent it, right? It's going to be in your payables, kind of. It's going to be an obligation reflecting for this year, okay? So that's the part that I know that is a bit tricky for non-accounting people to wrap their heads around. If you have any question, I'm monitoring the chat box, please. You can always post your question. And if you do not hear me anymore, please let me know on time. I don't want a situation where it's now like I've talked. Okay, someone says he's not been getting the recordings. Yes, the recordings are on YouTube channel. And if you are on the platform, we have a platform, you will be getting the email that says, this is where you get the recording, For like today now, I send the email out to people that the recording for last week, this is where they get them. So I'm going to share it again at the end anyway. I'm going to share the links and I'm even going to share the YouTube link where you're going to get all the recorded version. Okay, so now I've tried to explain that accrual-based system, where you have to adjust your financial your financial transactions to reflect that things are captured for the period that they are incurred in. So utilities that you maybe you normally pay after you use, right? You pay for NEPA bill after you use, you pay for some things after you use them. So you're going to capture them in that period, even though you have not yet paid, right? So depreciation, it's one of all those things too that non-accounting people find a bit tricky to wrap their heads around. So what it says is that when you buy a car, that car is going to serve you for, say, 4 years. You're not going to take all of the money for that car and take it out as expense. You're going to say, the depreciation says, okay, I'm going to spread this expense over the lifetime of these assets. So that's also depreciation. Okay. So those are things that you need to be familiar with. So now let's see how all of these things leads to the financial statement, right? So everything that happens to revenue, all the things that are posted in the revenue account, so all the postings. So if I check all the transactions, so let's take a look at it. So let's look at all these transactions that equal the revenue. Let's look at them. The on please help me to mute yourself so that we don't. So let's look for all the sales they made. So on February 25, they made a sale of 30 million. That's the revenue. Okay. So sales account or revenue account, they kind of mean the same thing. So they made an sales of 30 million. You will notice that here I have all those sales recorded. So every time we make a sale, you see 15 million sales, we made another sale, 30 million sales. You know, all those sales, they enter the sales account. And then if you remember that in our trial balance, there's an account for every major thing we are tracking. So there's a sales revenue account, sales or revenue account. And then you see all the final posting there is going to equal our income statement revenue. Then equally to all of our cost of goods sold expenses. So when the company buys inventory, they buy raw materials. So we bought 80 million naira, raw materials. Okay, we bought different. Let's see, all those things we bought as they get posted here. Where's that 80 million naira one? See, we acquired inventory of 80 million naira. Which by the time we expend that sales, so by the time we make the sales, so that inventory goes down. So one time we made a sale of 15 million naira, and then we used up inventory of 8 million naira. So when an inventory is used up, the balancing side is the cost of goods sold, right? So the cost of goods sold captures it. So that captures for us all of the costs of our, production and the entire thing that we sold, the cost. And so that one too gets totaled together. Check the general ledger, check the trial balance. You will see that all of that also gets added up, and the final value is what is going to form for us the cost of goods sold. And then from there, if you take out the cost of goods sold from the revenue, you're going to have the gross profit, and equally to all of our operating expenses. So admin expenses, salary expenses, all of those things. When you add them up, so let me just go here and see the kind of things that make up all those. So when I add up all those expenses, salary is one of them, utilities, is another one of them. Which other ones do I have explicitly stated here? So you see all those, even maintenance fee, things, consultants, professional services, all those operating expenses. When you add all those expenses together, right, they're going to form your operating expenses, your marketing and distribution expenses. Okay, great. Then if we also take our distribution expense, what we took as, okay, we bought 2 billion naira worth of assets, but then we spread them over their useful lifetime. A portion of the spreading that is for this year we are reporting for, when you take it out, right, that's going to form your depreciation expense. Then we took loans. So the loans we took that we are paying interest on, again, let me see where they took the loan that they are paying interest on. Let's see. Loan. In case you see it, let me know. Yeah, so you see the company took a loan of 300 million naira from Zenith Bank to be paid over 6 years. So if a company is paying loan over 6 years and then they are paying 3 million naira interest to cover the loan, interest on the loan, you see that in that interest portion, we have to capture it. So that's what feeds in here, right? And again, all these things are here already. So you'll notice that everything that you can describe that affects a company's financial, you can always break them into credit and debit. And in the end, they will always lead us to the items we're going to fill in the income statement. Just that when we are doing this a lot in Excel, we're using formulas, we're using already pre-generated stuff from accounting software. In fact, if you have a very good accounting software, it can automatically pull out your income statement the way you want it, right? So you don't even need to do any of this. But just for sake of training, sometimes we let people have a feel of doing it themselves, okay? And then the earning before income taxes, the income tax, and then you get your income statement, your net profit, okay? Now, the balance sheet uses up every line of the trial balance. That's why I say the trial balance is a bit more like even the balance sheet, okay? So you see that it's split into the current assets. So the cash that we have. Do not worry that I'm not using the conventional arrangement. Normally, cash is like the last, but no worries. It's understanding that I want you to get first, okay? So all of our cash, is recorded, and that's the cash. Then the account receivable, all the money that our customers owe us, money that people have purchased our products, they've not yet paid us. So let's look for that type of a transaction now. Okay, so see, on April 12, 2016, right? So ShopRite will provide ShopRite products. We supply them 100 million worth of products every middle of the month. But you know what? They don't pay us immediately. They pay us on a net 30 term. So which means they pay us 30 days after. You know what that means? Whenever we sell to them, it's going to be after 30 days we're going to get our money. So at that moment that we sell, so let's go look at how this transaction is captured. April 12, 2016. April 12, 2016. Well. Has anybody seen it? That's strange. Did I omit it? What's the value involved? Let's go to check. Maybe I mixed the date up. 100 million naira sales. 100 million naira sales. This is it. Okay, April 12th. Oh, half of the month. So half of the month is on the 15th. We sell it to them here. So that's why it's carrying 15 here. Okay, great. So you see that this is that transaction, right? This is the sale we made. We made sale of 100 million naira. But you know what? That 100 million naira is not coming to us as cash. It's going to the account receivable because the customer has not paid. The customer is going to pay exactly 30 days after. Exactly 30 days after. Let's see where that comes in. You see, this is it, May 15th. So when they finally pay, then it goes to cash, and then we take it out of the account receivable. So you see, all those transactions that are written in English here, this is how they play out, and this is how you eventually see them also here. So whatever is left that they're still owing us. So the one we sold to them in December is going to come January next year, and that is why it's still reflecting in our account receivable. Okay, then inventory. So what we have as stock, our inventories, right? So inventory also too, it gets reflected here. And these, are the typical line items that make the total, the current asset lines, okay? It could be a few other things too. Maybe we have prepayments, things you paid for that you have not used. But then again, let us move on. And the company, what about the non-current assets, like the fixed assets, right? So the plant, property, and equipment, the factory, all of that, right? And typically, when I'm just to make this a bit easy for you to understand, that's why I'm writing it this way. So if you spend 350 million naira on your plant, property, and equipment, right? So you don't just write that value here, right? So maybe you started the business this year, like for this company started this year. So all the money they spent this is the value of the plant, property, and equipment. But then because you are taking depreciation, you are spreading the cost over multiple years. So you have already taken out 20 million naira of the cost here, right? So you have to take it out of here. So this will always be the net book value. The value at the beginning of the year minus whatever depreciation. So I'm just writing here to make things transparent for non-accounting people. But typically, the here should just naturally reflect the net book value. Okay, so just to let you understand, then all of that equals our total assets, right? And then there's the current liabilities, which is now our obligations that are going to be due in the next 1 year, within the next 1 year. Okay, so we have the short-term loans, and then what we owe our suppliers, then accrued liabilities, and then deferred taxes, the ones that are due, almost immediately, tax for next year, or for this year, the year prior, and like that. So, uh, then the non-current aspect, the long-term loans, and any long-term liabilities. Okay, so they come in here, things that are going to obligations you're going to fulfill, over well, way longer than a year. Okay, and then you have the equity side, where you're going to have the share capital premium, then you're going to have the retained earnings, okay, and then whatever dividend you paid is knocked off. So typically, it's just what is left after you take out your liabilities from the assets, and then if you pay dividends, you have to also take that out, and then you'll be left with that. So typically, it must balance out. When you add your total liabilities and equity, it must equal your total assets. Okay, so that is that portion. And similarly to for the cash flow, you will see that based on the accrual base, not the cash based reporting side, when we as individuals do our expenses and income, our personal finance, most of the time we're using cash based. You're looking at your bank statement and recording what went out, what came in. But when a company is doing a financial statement, that's not it. I've told you there is always accrual based. So it's not just looking at your bank statement and saying what came out, what came in. So that means that we will have to have another cash flow statement. That's going to reflect, okay, now what actually came in, what actually went out. Okay, so the income and then less the non-cash adjustment that changes. Okay, it's a bit technical to try to explain it, but just understand that it's broken down to the money that came in from our business operations. When you take out the revenue you received, when you take the revenue you received and you take out the expenses that actually went out, right? You're going to end up with the cash from operating activities. Then now, when you consider that you need to buy fixed assets, you need to reinvest in your company's long-term assets, right? You need to buy cars, you need to maybe install some set of a factory, a plant. Now, that one is captured separately, right? Under investing. This investing is you investing in your fixed assets in long-term stocks anyway. So also to capture when you make money from investment you are into, okay? So financial investment, whatever interest you've gotten, are also captured in here. Then there's the financing. So the financing talks more about, the capital funding. So you raise equity, you maybe also borrowed some money from bank. You took some loans anyway. Those ones are going to reflect here. So the loans you took, the payments you made, the payment portion of the loans, the things that are related to equity. So you gave equity owners some money as dividends. All of those things, even if you took new equity, it's going to reflect here. So it makes a lot of financial sense that these are broken down separately, and that's the pattern in financial statement. So when you're not an accountant, this is more like a crash course to you just understanding that, these are the things that you can make out as a financial statement by just even looking at the descriptions. So when the person describes to you all he has done in his business, you can see these are all English. Maybe he provides you all this explanation and receipts and bank statement evidence to help you see that truly these things were genuine transactions and tracking the dates that happened. We can take all of this and build out a journal, build a T account, build a general ledger, build a trial balance, use the trial balance to finally build the income statement and the balance sheet. Okay, so again, this is just in the finance and non-finance training that we do, finance for non-finance and entrepreneurs, finance for non-finance managers and entrepreneurs training we do. You do this just to have a feel, not necessarily so that you become a bookkeeper and be doing this. No, it's so that the practical and the concept they fit in. You understand the concept and you play it out, practically in an Excel file, and you see how everything plays out exactly. So that when you are looking at the big companies, big organizations' financial statement, you will just see that it's something you already understand, right? Okay, so now that takes us to the next in the agenda. Okay, so now I've shown us how we can take out the income statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow statement from all of that, the trial balance and all those lines of activities that have happened in the company, right? So now let's talk about budgeting and financial planning. So now this is where most of the people who want to get some knowledge of finance as a non-finance manager. This is the main reason they are going for this. Their company is forcing them to give plans. Okay, what are your plans? You need to submit your budget. You need to understand when we talk about we want to keep our operating expenses, low, maybe not more than 30%, of the entire revenue. You want to understand what does all these things mean? What do you need to do? So when you see financial statement, what do you need to adjust? What are the things that are within your control? So maybe I work in an IT firm because that has actually happened. I've had to do a training for someone in an IT firm that he is an engineer. He has no accounting or finance background, right? But now he's been promoted to CEO kind of level. And now the company on the management level, they are beginning to talk about all this, keeping cost of operating expenses down, trying to move some fixed expenses to become operating expenses, changing their operating model, doing some kind of managed services, things that you never needed to worry about before, right? So this is why many of them come for this kind of training or want to know finance. How can they be able to do their budgeting? How can they be able to make cases make a case for management that they need this amount of money to achieve these goals? How can they be able to plan rather than just be working on a monthly and quarterly basis? How can they be strategic going into the next 5 years and all of that, right? So budgeting and financial planning. Now, whenever you've understood all of these concepts as relates to the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow, right? You find out that every aspect of them also naturally gives rise to budgeting. So when the company says that this is our revenue target for next year, so let's talk about next year. Say next year, our revenue target for next year. Revenue target. So that revenue target for next year, which is going to impact on head of marketing, CMO, and if you have if it doubles as also the head of sales, if it's going to impact the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, even though if he has a sales background and has nothing about finance, this is where his own target is going to come from. Whenever the company's revenue target automatically becomes the sales manager's target. And you know what? It's from there the regional manager's target is going to flow from. It's from there that the product managers, then down to the field sales guys, their target is going to come from. It's from there monthly target is going to come out, right? So you see how these things begin to cascade down, right? So the target that's revenue target is what is going to drive. It's going to drive CMO. It's going to drive marketing expense or marketing activities. Let me use that word, not yet expense. So marketing activities, because the marketing that will allow us to achieve that revenue is going to drive even R&D. It's going to drive sales target. It's going to drive even on the expansion. It's going to drive capex, because for you to achieve some sales, you might need to expand your factory. It's going to drive many things, such that if you don't understand this, it will be as if people are just pushing you around. CEO says he wants, this is it, and then another department is holding you back. But when everybody understands this, it becomes a synergy, right? So when the company says, when they are describing what the financial plan is, for the next 5 years, and you're looking at the financial model that has all these plans, right? And you're seeing that, okay, we made 9.45, we made 0.945 million naira, and we want to make 2 billion naira next year. Our current factory capacity cannot produce the volume of goods that will reach that revenue. Instantly, production guys, operation guys, logistics, all those people now, their targets are beginning to come out from there, right? Do we need to expand production? Do we need to grow our vendor base. We need to expand our suppliers base to be able to get more our procurement that can fill in this, right? So you see where the strategy begins to come out, and then they begin to create ratios. So ratios like pegging. So some companies peg marketing expense to revenue. We don't want to spend more than 10% of our revenue on marketing. So you know what? The marketing guys cannot keep asking for money. Once he understands that, he cannot just keep asking for money arbitrarily. If he knows that he wants more money, then he needs to drive more sales. He needs to start looking for a better way of converting to sales rather than just always, I need more money, I need more money. You know, he's not just going to be asking for more staff. He's not going to be asking for more resources when he knows that already on the financial plan we have pegged that it's going to be no more than 10% of our revenue that's going to go to marketing expenses. So you know, all of those things now brings a lot of transparency and synergy in how everybody works. And you know what too? The guys in the head of operation, if it's a manufacturing company too, you know, the head of production, head of operations, they're going to understand that when the company is putting pressure on them in fact, they won't even see pressure on them. They will understand that if currently with this amount of revenue that we make, our suppliers are struggling, there are times we are stock out, then nobody needs to be pressuring them that, you know, why are we stock out, why are we stock out, why are we stock out? They start looking for avenues to expand the supply chain, right? So similarly to, they'll start planning about warehouse capacity, expansion, logistics. They start all of their planning to begin to come out from there, right? And then similarly to the cost of goods sold to become a kind of a plan / budget for production, right? So it's from here that the production department and everything that relates to the production of the materials of the goods, they're going to understand that the company has forecasted. So usually we take this as a kind of a percentage of revenue, or based on history, you get an idea of how much it costs you to produce a unit of these goods, right? Then you adjust for some things that will happen in the future that are not necessarily like that in the past. But the key thing is, most of the time, it's always there's a good ratio. There's a ratio we use, which is as percentage of revenue. So when we take it as percentage of revenue, it's always very flat most of the times. And when there are jumps, somebody needs to explain where they are wide jump, because it's a very bad thing if it jumps up. So it could be, if it jumps up, it means that your cost of sourcing or production has gone up, and you have not been able to pass that cost to your consumers. You've not been able to raise prices. So this is another very strategic line. And you know what? Again, it begins to come out the procurement plan. It begins to build down to even what is going to be even down to the production plan and all of that too. Okay. So then the operating expenses too. Usually to operating expenses, because it's from here we're going to have the overhead costs, admin costs. So admin costs, salaries, distribution, marketing, a whole lot of expenses to come in here that once the company starts forecasting their operating expenses, it begins to form the bedrock, the framework around which a whole lot of budget is. When you look at the budget for a company, about 90% of the budget lines are always around operating expenses. Okay? In fact, for some companies, they take out all the other ones separately and just focus on the operating expenses budgets. And that's what they put all their attention on. Okay? And so when some departments start complaining that they cut their budget, sometimes it might be either because they are not doing a top-down kind of approach. Everybody's doing up arbitrary. They tell each department to submit their budget for next year without showing them what the company's original plan, what the company's plan for the next year, without involving the managers in what the plan for next year is. We're not asking for budget it's not going to really, people will be feeling like they're being driven, without any roadmap, right? But then when you understand this, so when you as a non-finance person understand this, you begin to be more strategic in, even when as the head of even head of HR, right? Which you have influence on the personnel expenses and some of the general office expenses, right? Once you understand this, you'll be able to even know whether you are going to be needing more staff or you'll have to maximize the staff you have, right? You will start understanding all of the things that will play out, from all of these figures once you see this, rather than you just listening to the complaints of the different departments and just becoming someone who is bent to which manager can complain the most and says, oh, I want more staff, right? You are able to key into also the major plan of the company. Okay, so well, this comes out of the capex. Let me not write capex, only capex and fixed assets. Okay, so from there you begin to see the assets you have before I did you for replacement for all of those are going to drive out how you're going to interpret though normally it's the capex that will drive it. This is not going to drive anything by itself. It's when you spend, then this will translate to what to forecast for the capex, for the depreciation. So tax, typically too, is fixed. So now let's move on to what are the line items in the balance sheet? What are the strategy about them? Usually cash and cash equivalent is a resultant thing. It's something that is a result of other things. So you don't really forecast that one. Like you don't go and say this is what your cash will be next year. It will just naturally come out from all the other activities in the company. So account receivable, right? Companies, these drive your working capital efficiency. Typically, you don't want your customers owing you more than is necessary. In fact, you want to keep the days your receivable at hand, receivables, the days that takes your customers to pay, you want to keep it as low as possible. As low as possible. Okay, so that you don't become someone who is making sales and is cash strapped. You don't want to be a company that you are making sales, but all your money are on with customers, and some of them even become bad receivables that you will never really realize and start making provisions for and have to take them out. Okay, so and then inventory too. This also relates to your working capital efficiency and supply chain, guys. Supply chain. So if you work in supply chain, it will be very good you understand all the things that has been happening to this line item in your company's financials, right? And so again, typically companies want to find that sweet spot, as regards to how many days inventory we hold, days inventory, because there is a cost to holding inventory, and you don't want to have stock outs. You don't want to run out of stock. Okay. So, and if you go to this one, this is going to relate to expansion plan. If you need to expand your production, then you're going to have to buy more assets, right? And then payable also relates to working capital efficiency, okay? Which also to the supply chain procurement people they need to be aware of, they need to be more strategic with it. So you want to have a favorable payment terms with your suppliers. There are some companies that will be doing business with. I don't want to mention names, but I remember like 3 right off the top of my head. So in 2018, let's say company A, we did business with company A, and we gave them invoice, and they paid before they came for the training. So we trained their staff, and they paid ahead. And you know what? In 2019, we did training again for them, and they paid a portion. So they paid like 60%, and then they paid the remaining percent after. But you know what? This year we did training for them, and they sent us some vendor registration form that they've not sent before. And then they now indicated their payment terms now. And you know what their payment terms now is? They will pay us only after we have delivered the service. And I think maybe 1 month or 2 weeks, right? So now they have formalized it that it will be like that for every vendor. So what have they done? The procurement guys have become more strategic and say it's better, we try to pay people after so we have more cash. And usually because maybe they are into telecom services anyway. So most of their customers should probably do that to them. So when your customers are holding your money and you are paying your suppliers, at a point you might have to start borrowing money to execute projects. Why? Because the project you're executing, they've not paid you a couple. And you have to spend up front. The cost that will go into executing the project have to come up front from you. So companies start thinking, okay, of all the expenses that we need to incur, right? Which ones can we negotiate with the supplier and say, you know what, we're going to pay you also after, the same way our own customers are paying us after. So you see, those are some of the things. Some people think it's arbitrary or it's unfair. Everybody wants to be efficient, right? And so accrued liabilities, I'm not going to talk about that one. Then money you owe bank or long term. So you see that every line items, there's a way that you can relate them to strategy, right? And let's go now to, these are the major things here. All of these are effect of things that happen, except if you as a non-finance person, I don't think they will involve you in when they want to raise money as loan or as equity. So you concern yourself more about these line items when it comes to your own strategy part. Okay? And then there's the cash flow side, right? So again, you might not need to worry too much about the cash flow side because again, it's going to be showing the result of what is happening on the balance sheet and on the income statement. Okay, so you as a non-finance person, right, as a non-finance manager, you won't have to worry too much about the cash flow side, but it's good if you understand all the things happening there. Okay, so let's go see what I have done. So that's this. I think I'm short of time, but then I can quickly just mention there are some financial terms that you need to be a bit familiar with. Okay, so there is a gross profit. It's very easy to know. It's the profit that you have after you remove your direct cost of production. Okay, then there is operating profit. Okay, so there's the profit after you remove your operating expenses. Now there are multiple variants of this. So there's what we call EBITDA, earning before interest, tax, and depreciation. So this one usually show a much more, for planning purposes, it shows a truer picture of the actual cash-based expenses, kind of, or closest to the cash-based expenses. Okay, so management, I've seen companies that they have plans around this, so they have ratios that they don't want this to go, because sometimes you can't control so much whether you need to upgrade a plant and all of that. And the moment you upgrade a plant, the D&A is going to come in, depreciation and amortization. Okay, so but then you can control all those normal cash-based expenses. So you see the EBITDA, and then sometimes when we talk about valuation multiples, I can start mentioning this a bit now yet. So most of those valuation multiples, they can work with, EBITDA ratio, EBITDA multiple. So how many times EBITDA the company is going to be valued at? So times EBITDA. Are we 4 times EBITDA? Are we? Then there is EBIT, earning before interest and tax, right? So again, these two also has there's some multiples, valuation multiples profit. So EBIT is another fallout of your operating profit type of, So this is now your profit before interest and tax, operating profits anyway. But now still, but before interest and tax is the closest actually to your operating profit anyway. So most times when the depreciation and amortization is already included, EBIT is what comes out, right? So then we have the profit before tax. So profit before tax, and then the profit after tax. Okay. Then if you go to the balance sheet, we have return on assets. Return on assets. How well are you using your asset to generate revenue? We have the return on equity. So how well are you taking 1 million naira of investors' money and generating money from it? So for every kobo of an investor, how much are you generating as profit from them? And then we also have asset turnover. So these ones are tied to profits. Tied to profit after tax. Tied to profit after tax. But but this one is not tied to profit after tax. This one is tied to revenue. So how well are you converting your assets to revenue? Okay. So asset turnover, inventory turnover. How well are you converting your inventory to sales? So this one is usually tied to cost of goods sold. Then we also have which are the common other ones relating to the balance sheet side. I'm short of time. We have quick ratio, cash ratio. But let's start with the current ratio. So when you take your assets, your current assets over, so how well can your current assets cover your current liabilities? So these are things that you need to be familiar with, even if you are not going to be creating them. You need to understand when people mention these things, what they mean, what they stand for, right? Similarly to there's a cash ratio, there's quick ratio. So instead of just current assets, right? We are saying current assets, but we take out inventory. Inventory is not always liquid as such. In fact, when a company has to be, when even banks seizes some of your assets, and maybe even sometimes people take loans that are tied to the inventory, when they seize those inventory or seize, most times they are not able to realize the face value. They might need to sell it at a fire, what do they call that stuff? Anyway, so that's why sometimes this can be a purveyor of the true picture of the cash coverage, or of the current asset coverage. Then this one is purely cash. How well can your cash cover your current liabilities? Okay, I'm going to skip a bit more, but then these are things you should be familiar with. You should be familiar with all of these, and then the other ones you should be familiar with are also these ones. So I've listed them. So when a company wants to expand, so an expansion project is like a capital project. A company wants to set up a new subsidiary, wants to start a new production line. Again, so these are some terminologies you have to be familiar with. What's the net present value? So if we spend, upfront costs or setup costs. So it's going to cost us, if we're going to spend, say, 100 million naira to set up a new production line, so what are the cash flow that will come after? So cash flow in year one, cash flow in year, all those more years, cash flow in different years. So this is like money that goes out. So what is at the end, what are the cumulative cash flows? So maybe we get 20, 40 million, we get 30 million. Anyway, so when you think of all this cash flow that will come out from that project, that expansion project or whatever it is, then we want to say in today's value. In today's value, what is it? So in that today's value, what is the value of the money? That's the net present value, that's the NPV. So that's how you will know whether that project is actually profitable or not. It's not just enough that you are nominally removing the money. There is a time value of money that is a sacrosanct thing in finance. 1 naira today is not same thing as 1 naira next year. Well, everybody now knows that anyway in Nigeria. But in finance, is always there. So then another fallout of this is, okay, at what rate will NPV be zero? At what return rate? At what rate of return will NPV be? And you know what that is called? That is that internal rate of return. Okay, so if I know that I'm spending 1 million naira on a project, and then I'm getting exactly 1 million naira back in today's value, that means the internal rate of return of the project is zero, because without any rate of return, what I have spent, I'm getting back. But then if I'm spending 100 million naira and I'm getting back 200 million naira in today's value, right? This thing, we look at it years over that period, and then we tell me, okay, you know what? Maybe my rate of return is 15%, or it's 20%, or it's 5%. So that's the internal rate of return. There's a formula for it to compete, but you understanding the concept is what's important here. Now, there's what we call terminal value. Some projects don't actually end. So, take for instance, you build a hotel, right? The hotel is meant to live for as long as possible. You can't really say the hotel is going to be 50 years or 100 years, but you can't actually forecast till forever in your own forecast, right? So what do we do? So what companies typically do is they forecast for a period, for some years, and do terminal value after. So depending on the kind of project, there are different ways of computing terminal value. When you do this for a traditional manufacturing company, then we use the growing perpetuity way. When you do this for real estate, also similar to growing perpetuity rate, but sometimes some people use other valuation ways, like ability for you to sell off the property after that year, that period. So there are many, depending on the kind of assets, or the kind of investment or project, that will determine the method of doing terminal valuation. But it's always talking about the value after those periods that you are forecasted to for a project or a company or whatever it is that you are. But in this case now, if you're a non-finance person, it's usually with projects that you saw, like construction engineer, because of your expertise, a company has hired you head of a project, and these guys are trying to build a road that will be concessions, there'll be toll gates on it. So how do you even know on paper, that this thing is going to be profitable or not? How do you know? So all those things are then the payback period. So if you're going to put in external money, when will the money come back? When will those guys get back their money? The payback period is not really that. Most people use it. Most finance people, they understand this one very fast. Oh, my 100 million naira will be back by the 6th year. But they don't understand that it's not useful as much, because it doesn't typically factor in the time value of money. And then also too, there's what we call timing. If you borrowed money to go and set up a cocoa farm, I was discussing with someone, let me see if he's on this call. He mentioned that he will try and join us. So, he was explaining how the cocoa farm business works out. For the first 5 years, you might not even get anything out of it. And you are taking a loan, and you have to pay back the loan in 4 years. And your product that you're going to make is not going to come out until year 5. That's already a loss. Forget about the payback period. The thing is that they will have confiscated your farm when you are not able to pay back before the first money. The timing mismatch in cash flow timing and time value of money. So beware of it. It's something that you should beware of. Even though it's easiest for most of us in non-finance, non-accounting role to understand. So beware of payback, beware of this. It's not very practically useful. So I need to wrap up. We're here. Capital structure, you could have your project funded by debt or equity or a mixture, right? So you need to understand the implications. When a project is funded by equity, right? So you have a lot more leeway. You don't have to worry about servicing the loan, repaying the money back, right? All the money that will come back will be after expenses and all for the equity guys. So they can't come and seize the business and say, you know what, you've not paid us any dividend this year. We want to maybe put some people in jail or take some people to court. But a bank can say you have not paid your interest and they can take you to court. They can. So there's a lot more flexibility when you get equity. But then it's not all the time you will have access to equity. So you might need to fund some projects, some part of it, or it's not always advisable to fund all of your project with debt because it gives you very little room for flexibility. If something like COVID-19 happens again and disrupts plans, banks and loan people who give you loan, they don't like to bend easily. Okay, so but debt has an advantage of it. It comes with tax. The word is a tax shield. So it comes to tax shield. I used to call it interest tax cover, but it reduces your tax liability because the tax is interest deductible. So and then it also reduces your if you're going to use a valuation that is based on weighted average cost of capital, then having debt actually improves your value, enterprise value, because in the formula of calculating enterprise value using WACC, that tax reduction in debt plays a very significant role to make your company a lot more valuable than the version of your company without debt. So for financial engineering, for making your company become much more appealing to outside investment, sometimes you want to take debt. So I've seen companies who the group company now that are putting all the money in as equity, they make it a mix of equity and debt. So they could say, okay, we lend to this subsidiary from this sister company. So it's because of those advantages anyway. And working capital is, as I mentioned, on the balance sheet, there are some line items that relate to the current asset and the current liability. So how well you manage those are a very big deal. So you want to also see that you will have enough money. You're starting a project, right? Maybe take you 6 months for that production line to come upstream. You're going to be paying salaries. You're going to be incurring some things to make sure that you have your leeway. You have enough capital to cover those periods where there's nothing that is going to come in, right? So in project finance, you need to understand those concepts. Okay, so thank you very much.